On this prequel episode, we're following up on Fantastic Mr. Fox, learning about scary kids, and previewing Children of the Corn. Hello and welcome back to a prequel episode of This Film Is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. Let's get right into it with our first segment, which is going to be our follow-up polls, our listener polls on Fantastic Mr. Fox. Katie, what do people think?
So the movie won out. We didn't get all that many votes on this one. We got maybe like half as many as we got for our Lord of the Rings.
If not less.
Series. Yeah, if not less than. So on Facebook, the movie kind of just like barely
scraped
out a victory. It got 57.
By one vote, I think.
57% of the vote. The book got 43% of the vote. We didn't get a lot of like interesting comments this time. We did get one comment on Instagram apologizing that they weren't able to finish the episode because of the meltdown.
It's not. I get it. Like I said, we said, I get it. I get it. If anybody was not able to get it through because they were annoyed or whatever, that's fine.
It was a bit of a meltdown.
I don't generally, but yeah.
We did have a comment on Facebook from Ashley, who said that she hadn't read the book, but basically said that it wouldn't surprise her if Wes Anderson just like set aside substance while adapting this particular one, which I don't think I disagree with. No,
for sure. Definitely the case.
And then over on Twitter, the movie won by a larger margin over there, 67% of the vote. The book got 33%. We had one comment from Shelby, who said, "I really enjoyed the book. It's like a Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd cartoon, but with stakes."
That's fair.
Yeah, kind of. It doesn't have like the zany stuff.
Right.
Like he's not like throwing imaginary doorways into sides of walls or anything like that. But yeah, kind of a similar thing. And then on Instagram, I wanted to talk about this real quick because I thought it was an interesting insight. We got a DM from Doug M. Campbell, who has been a listener and follower for a while. Who had, was kind of, I guess, ruminating on the idea of like a theme or a message in this movie after we talked about it, and said, let me see where do I want to start here. Wes Anderson, I believe, was trying to tell a more personal story on the negative aspects of trying to recapture the glory days of your youth. For Mr. Fox as a character who was good at snatching chickens and playing sports, but then events happened that forced him to change. And now Mr. Fox is left unfulfilled in midlife, having a midlife crisis of sorts because of the image he once had. Meanwhile, his son Ash is under his father's shadow, tries to live up to him even though he can't. Ultimately, I feel like the through line with the film and the ending especially is that life will change. While you can reminisce about your past, it's more important to appreciate what you have in life now and what new memories you're missing out on. So I thought that was an interesting take on it.
That's a very valid reading of the film. I think my biggest problem with that is that to me that I didn't like Fox as a character. At least as played the way written and played by George Clooney. I didn't much care about his sort of personal. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I just had trouble identifying with him in any way. Like he was just kind of a jerk. It seemed like most of the movie. And I didn't see the spark. Maybe if they'd given me more in the beginning of the spark of why people, like why his wife loved him and why, because our first scene with them is them stealing chickens together. And then, and I just sort of felt, I don't know. I think if I had liked the character more, then that would have maybe stuck out to me more.
No, I do think that's a good reading of it. Yeah. I think that probably, like, as a theme or a message makes more sense than anything we maybe talked about.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that I didn't get that reading, but I think I might have got that reading if they hadn't added the character of Christopherson. If there had just been more of a focus on like the dad trying to relive his youth and the son trying to live up to that image without like the extra character and the extra conflict.
Yeah, potentially.
I think it might have come through more clearly.
Yeah, and I think there's just enough other sort of loose messages mixed in that it sort of dilutes that.
Yeah,
that if they had made that garbled. The stronger main point, like if they had focused more on that, overall, I think it might have come through stronger. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's definitely there, and and we talked about living up to the relationship between Ash and his dad and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But I think it's perfectly valid and definitely probably for sure what the movie, one of the main sort of thesi that the movie was putting forward. I just had trouble identifying it, I think, and also I didn't find it particularly. It just felt to me like there was much richer thematic grounds to till there. Yeah,
I think there was just like a lot of stuff in the way.
Yeah.
And maybe other potentially more interesting things.
I think,
we could have focused on.
I think there's I think to me that there's more interesting things they could have focused on, and especially with just the setup of the way the story lays out. It to me, I was looking for something more, that was commenting more on society than on like a single person,
right?
And sort of dealing with life, I guess, because it was about this society and about, I don't know, but yeah, no, for sure, that's a very good analysis, and I think that, I mean, that's definitely, and I guess, like I said, I think I got that out of it to some extent. It just, to me, it wasn't satisfying, but and I also just don't find that particularly like illuminating. Maybe is that part of it too, like that message doesn't particularly strike me as super meaningful. Not that it's not meaningful, just to me for whatever reason,
right? I don't know if it's a message that everyone can necessarily identify with.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody can identify with it to some extent. To me, it just doesn't like, I don't know. Yeah, I think I just revert back to the same thing. That to me, it's just not super interesting. But I don't think it comes through clear enough to be like to therefore make the movie very successful, I guess would be my argument. But
no, I would agree with that. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. All right, that was it for our follow-up poll and comments. Let's move on to learning things and talk about scary-ass children.
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about children as a horror trope. So this is one of the more popular, maybe most popular tropes in the horror genre.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more popular tropes,
So we might hear this called demonic child, creepy child, bad seed, or maybe demon seed. And what this trope plays on is kind of that juxtaposition of innocence and like creepiness or murderousness.
Murderiness, I believe.
Murderiness. Yeah. So we think of children as being innocent, as being in need of protection, like they need an adult with them. So by inverting this, the trope kind of is poking at some deep-rooted fears.
Yeah.
A child might not be like physically dangerous. Maybe sometimes they are. Most of the time not.
Yeah.
But kind of that unnaturalness of the creepy child is really just chilling.
Yeah. I would also, I think part of what goes into that, I'm making sure I'm not jumping any of your other notes and it doesn't look like I am. I think because it violates the, like you said, the innocent in need of adult protection. And also there's like a deep-seated evolutionary reaction to children that humans have, and pretty much all species that breed, you like you said, that innocence, and they need your help, they need your protection, and so applying the inverse of that onto a child is it inherently puts us on edge and is weird and weirds us out. So
So we have some kind of variations on this trope. You can have kids who act or seem just kind of unnaturally adult. You can have like emotionless.
That's why Jerry Maguire is a horror movie.
Emotionless kids. And of course our murderous or like psychopathic, the variety. And then of course orphans, which I put in as their own category. The most terrifying orphans. Creepy children are frequently female, but there are plenty of example of boys in the role in this trope.
Yeah, I would bet that it's probably pretty even.
I think it probably is, but I think more of the well-known examples maybe tend to be female.
Maybe. I mean, you would argue that the example, at least to me, well, I guess there's two like main examples, and one of them's female, and to me the other one's male, and one being The Exorcist, which again she's possessed, which is slightly different, and then the other being The Omen, which is a boy.
Yeah. So
like to me, those are like, I don't know. Like if you have Sammy and I were like scary kids, name 3, I'd be like Damien, the girl from The Exorcist, and maybe like.
What about the girl from The Bad Seed?
I don't know what that is.
All right.
I don't know what that is. Is that a movie?
Yeah, it's the movie for which that variation on the trope is named, I believe.
I don't know. To me, the Omen is like the one of these, but that's just me. I don't know. Like if you had me to name one, I would say The Omen, and I would say Damien. But anyways,
but I was reading a really interesting article. I can link it at some point about like why it's so often little girls in this kind of role, and like how it plays on that kind of juxtaposition of innocence, like even more so.
Right, yeah.
Because even more so than little boys. Right, we expect little girls are sugar and spice and everything nice. Yeah,
there's definitely even an inherent misogyny in that, in terms of that sort of default stereotype we have of little kids, even is then if you were going to look at little kids and go, okay, little kids innocent versus adults, little kids are more innocent versus little boys or little girls. Generally, if you polled people, they would say little girls.
Yeah, little girls, totally, definitely.
So yeah
until they murder you.
Yeah.
So there are some tropes that go hand in hand with this trope, like mini tropes, if you will. Creepy singing or nursery rhymes.
Tropelets, I believe.
Yeah, tropelets. Also creepy dolls.
Yeah, for sure.
And creepy drawings done by the creepy children.
Yes, those all fit in.
This trope often also has supernatural themes. Doesn't necessarily have to, but it often does. The kid could be almost like always, a literal demon. For example, like Rosemary's Baby. You can have like undead horrors, like in Pet Sematary, which we've done, or The Girl from the Ring.
Yep.
And then I included this as its own kind of category because it's a little bit different, I think. But vampires, or like similar mythological creatures.
Yeah.
So you have a creature that looks like a kid, but is actually pretty old. Like Claudia from Interview with the Vampire. There are a couple of characters whose names escape me in the Twilight series that are like creepy little kids.
The one that sticks out to me because it's a fantastic movie and they just remade it. But the movie Let the Right One In is about it's about 2 kids, but one of them is a little girl, is a child. I'll say, for lack of spoilers, is a child. It's complicated in the Let the Right One In, but is a child who is a vampire, but is also, we find out, like 1,000 years old or whatever, because it's a vampire. But anyways, Let the Right One In. They remade it with Chloe Grace Moretz, and it was Let Me In, I think was the American. I think was the American version, but it's like a Danish film or something originally. Really good, from like the 90s or early 2000s. It's called Let the Right One In. I highly recommend it if people haven't seen it and want to watch like an interesting psychological like vampire love story. Like it's a different movie, but it's really good.
All right, a couple other notable examples that I haven't mentioned. Pearl in The Scarlet Letter is kind of a creepy, like unnaturally adultish little kid.
Yeah.
Young Tom Riddle in Harry Potter, I think qualifies.
For sure.
Aaliyah in Dune.
I haven't read or seen Dune, so I'll take
I haven't
your word
either,
for it.
but I looked up some of these. I looked up a video and it was pretty creepy.
There you go.
Aaliyah, I already said that. Rhonda in The Bad Seed, I mentioned. And you brought up Damien in The Omen. Esther Coleman in Orphan, which is kind of...
Spoilers. If anybody wants to watch the movie The Orphan, it's about to be spoiled. Skip ahead 10 seconds. That's the whole twist of the movie.
I know. It's the whole...
Okay, I'm just letting you know. Go ahead.
It's sort of inverted because she ends up being an adult who looks like a kid.
Yeah.
Kind of like our vampire variant.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring this up since this has been popular on Amazon lately, the series. This gets subverted in Good Omens, where you have the literal Antichrist who ends up being a pretty normal kid.
There you
go. So there are loads of examples of this. This little talk here really doesn't even begin to scrape the surface. And then there are even more examples of stories that just kind of play with this idea and don't really have it as like a main trope.
Right.
So are there any examples we didn't name that you love? And what are your favorite examples of creepy kids? We want to hear from you guys.
There you go. Favorite creepy kids. I'm trying to think of one we didn't talk about.
Could we count the kid from The Sixth Sense? He's kind of creepy.
Yeah, he's a little creepy. And that's one of the ones where you're talking about where it doesn't end up, him being kind of weird and creepy isn't the point.
Right, they just kind of play with
that to make the movie ambiance and the whole story a little more off-putting.
Yeah.
But he's just a normal kid. He's just kind of like sees dead people.
But totally normal otherwise.
All right, that was it for our Learning Things segment. Let's move on and talk about Children of the Corn, the book.
Every child is afraid of the dark, the unknown, the nightmare. In Gatlin, Nebraska, that nightmare is in the corn. Stephen King's Children of the Corn.
All right, so this is a short story by Stephen King. It was first published in the March 1977 issue of Penthouse. I always think it's interesting when this kind of stuff crops up in like Penthouse or Playboy. It was later collected in King's 1978 collection Night Shift. And it is also in the collection Stephen King Goes to the Movies. So if you want to read it, you can pick up either of those collections.
I assume Stephen King Goes to the Movies is a collection of short stories that have been made into movies.
I believe so, yes.
That makes sense, yeah.
So it has a couple of connections to other King stories, which is something that he is wont to do. The fictional town of Gatlin, which is, I believe, the main town in this story, is also mentioned in It. And Hemmingford Home, a neighboring town to Gatlin, was also the town where Mother Abigail lived in The Stand. And it was also the location of The Last Rung on the Ladder and 1922.
Oh, all right. Well, there you go. The Stephen King cinematic or literary universe.
Right.
Which, yeah, like you said, he definitely had done his fair share of weaving and mixing of settings in his stories. All right, let's talk about Children of the Corn, the film.
From Stephen King, the author of Carrie, The Shining, The Dead Zone, and Christine, an adult nightmare. Children of the Corn.
I'm here, Lord! I'm ready!
Stephen King's Children of the Corn, an adult nightmare.
As it's clear now, we don't have many facts. There was not much.
Yeah, there was not much out there
about this movie. I'm sure there's more than I could find in a search this afternoon, but there wasn't. There's usually a fair amount of stuff, and this I was like, all right, well, I guess we're gonna have a short episode. So it is a 1984 film directed by Fritz Kirsch. It was his directorial debut, and he's only directed like 13 films total. This is definitely his most popular one. It was written by George Goldsmith, or adapted by George Goldsmith. The movie had an $800,000 budget, which is pretty cheap even in 1984, and it made $14.6 million, which is
That's not bad.
very good return on investment. Because even if you're going in with the advertising, the movie made 10-12 times its money back, which is quite good. Stephen King wrote a script of this based on his own short story after the movie rights were purchased by Hal Roach Studios. But the Hal Roach Studio executives didn't want to use King's script for whatever reason, and they hired George Goldsmith to rewrite it. And Goldsmith, talking about this, said that Stephen King's story started with 35 pages of Bert and Vicky, who are the adults, I think, and the main characters in the book or in the movie, arguing in a car. And so he decided that was too boring, and he wanted to tell the story through the eyes of two new characters, and they end up being child characters. So I don't know how that'll differ from the book, but those characters are either not in the book or not in the book very much. So on the dashboard of Bert and Vicky's car, I assume in the beginning of the movie, is a copy of Night Shift, as you mentioned earlier, which is the collection that this is from. Overall, this movie has not have great reviews. It's got a 36% on Rotten Tomatoes, and Roger Ebert gave it 1 star, 1 out of 4 stars, or thumbs up, or however they do that. Yeah, I think he does stars.
1 out of 4. I'm looking at this in our notes, and I thought it said 1/4 of a star.
Well, yeah, I wrote 1 out of 4, and it auto corrected to 1/4 of a star, which would be even worse. But this movie doesn't have great reviews. I've actually never seen it, but it is a bit of a cult kind of classic in terms of like it's pretty popular, and at least it's more culturally. It has entered the cultural consciousness in a way maybe beyond what its quality of film is,
like
potentially.
Bunch of sequels.
Oh, they made like 8 different spin-offs and sequels and that sort of thing. Like there's a bunch of movies. But I think, I don't know. I'd be interested to see if people say, like, if our audience, how many people have seen it and what if they like it or not. I guess because I know people that like it. But again, I was kind of surprised by how, in general, even like IMDb, the scores weren't super high. It had like a 6, like the viewer rating was like a 6 out of 10 or something, which is, not horrible, especially for like a horror movie. But it's not great. Usually, like the better horror movies are up around 8s and 9s and that sort of thing.
6 out of 10, that's a D. Yeah,
and so I'm a little interested to see how it is, because I've never seen it, but it's like I said, it's one of those things that's totally the cultural awareness. Yeah, and I wonder if that's above and beyond its actual.
Like, has it transcended?
Yeah, has it transcended its original quality? Yeah, and become this. It is kind of a cultural meme at this point, and has been for years. And I do wonder. I'm interested to actually watch the movie, because it's one of those ones that just like, for whatever reason, I never saw. Main reason I just don't watch that many horror movies, but still, just never saw it. And so, yeah, I'm excited to watch it. I'm going to try not to go in looking for any deep cultural messages about society, and I'll probably find some anyways. But
that is Stephen King.
Yeah. Yeah, his will have something.
Yeah, it'll have some kind of message, unless they really butchered it like they did. They did rewrite it, and
he did dislike a lot of the changes, from what I've heard. There were elements of what they changed that I read that he did not like. I don't know what specifically, but there is stuff that he was not happy about. Well, so, anyways, that's that. And, we have to figure out where that's at. To watch.
We haven't looked for it anywhere yet. No. But maybe we could also. We live in the Midwest. Maybe we could go find a cornfield and have like a photo shoot.
There you go. We're great. There's cornfields everywhere.
There really are.
And we're almost to the point where we could go down to the corn maze. The corn maze is probably already open.
Corn maze.
Yeah, there's a farm not too far from us that has a big corn maze, so they may.
Oh, I'm going to pose this question to you guys, because I've been asking this question for a long time. Why aren't corn mazes called mazes? I want to know. Give me your input. Why don't we call them mazes?
There you go. And on that note, that's going to do it for this episode. Until next time, guys, gals, non-binary, and everybody else.
Keep reading books.
Keep watching movies.
And keep being awesome.